Folks, before you even start today's video, pause it and go over to shopwcbs.com and get yourself a world-class Bullshitters t-shirt. We just launched, we have some awesome designs, and we're going to be adding more monthly. We're going to treat the store as a reflection of the channel. We have a great joke on a show, we're going to put it on a shirt. We're also going to make it very interactive. If you buy our beer glass and drink with us, you'll get a shout out. It'll be like drinking with us virtually. So folks, go over to shopwcbs.com, support independent entertainment because the real world entertainment sucks. And now it's time for the video.
The following is a world-class Bullshitters exclusive.
The new James Bond movie is out and it's underperforming, yet the shill media would tell you it's okay. I expect a lot more out of my 007. And well, this isn't my 007. Daniel Craig's been James Bond since 2005, that's when he was announced. Casino Royale dropped in 2006, and since then I've been on the fences because what I've been watching wasn't actually James Bond. It was becoming Bond. It was Bond Begins, a la Batman Begins, except by the time we got to The Dark Knight, we had one of the best superhero movies ever. By the time we got to Quantum of Solace, the follow-up to Casino Royale, we got a bunch of bullshit. Kind of what we got with No Time to Die, but we're not here to vent about the Daniel Craig era just yet. We're here to talk about the numbers. Not one, not two, not even 007 itself. We're here to talk about the box office numbers and how it's essentially half of what they've been predicting. Let's take it back a step, way back to September of 2021, when our good pal Scott Mendelson, yes, Scott, I don't have enough hair on my head so I pull it from my ass, Mendelson, is back because he said, box office prospects for No Time to Die just got brighter. Well, Scott Mendelson is ever the optimist. Clearly he was right on Solo. Remember, folks, Scott Mendelson is the man who said Solo is a failure because films featuring white men are box office poison. Now, 4 years later, we're talking about James Bond brightening it up. And guess what? He's the whitest character in existence. My credit score goes up just by being a fan. And this is what Scott had to say. This past Wednesday marked the 1 month away mark from No Time to Die's domestic release. However, the MGM Universal offering will begin its overseas rollout 2 weeks from today. Daniel Craig's fifth and final James Bond flick has been a canary in the coal mine for pandemic-era box office. It was the first tentpole to move due to increasing concerns about the Rona, shifting from April to November 2021. It was among the first to jump ship to 2021 after Tenet's underwhelming domestic box office, shifting first from April 2nd, 2021, and then to October 8th, 2021. However, with 2 weeks to go, I would argue signs point to a potentially robust theatrical run. Now, Scott gives a bunch of bullshit reasons. He likes to reference the other spy espionage films. He brings up Godzilla. He brings up China, and he refers to as not a kingmaker for the 007 series like the Fast Saga, but it's gonna help. Well, let's take a look at the next prediction, because Scott wasn't alone in his robust box office. CNBC, No Time to Die could hit $100 million during its domestic box office. No Time to Die could hit $100 million during its domestic opening box office, analyst says. No Time to Die is on pace to top $100 million at the box office during its debut weekend, box office analyst said. No other film releasing during the COVID pandemic has surpassed this benchmark. Venom, Let There Be Carnage, which debuted over the weekend, holds the pandemic-era record for the highest box office opening with $90 million. Well, good news, it's going to hold on to that record because James Bond did not perform at all. Last week we were told 72, then it was dropped to 62, but the real number is $56 million. Much lower than predicted. Long-awaited James Bond movie No Time to Die makes a disappointing $56 million in its opening weekend in the US compared to $35 million in the UK, which has 5 times fewer people and no vaccine or mask mandates. The long-anticipated new James Bond movie No Time to Die made a disappointing $56 million in its opening weekend in the US, sparking speculation vaccine and mask mandates may have put 007 fans off going out to their local movie theaters. I'm going to stop right there with that narrative. That's an excuse. I'd like to talk about the real reason why this movie opened very poorly and will continue to do so poorly. Not about weekends, not about holidays. It's about the fact that for the last few years, over a decade I might argue, what we've been watching on screen hasn't been James Bond. That's one point. But the actual point I want to make about all this, the whole thesis of this video, No Time to Die was marketed poorly. That is why it's failing. We talk about wokeness, we talk about political correctness, we talk about it infecting our pop culture, and No Time to Die is the first non-Disney property to go this way and feel the fucking wrath of society. And I'm happy. I'm happy James Bond is feeling this because I didn't like the movie for other personal reasons, and we'll talk about that in the next couple of days. But my issue is the way this film was marketed. Lashana Lynch is the new 007. The new 007. The new 007. Who the fuck is this woman, and why should we care? We didn't, we don't, And guess what? It was a big honey dick by the producers because Lashana Lynch's character really wasn't that bad of a character. She was marketed that way. She was marketed as woke. She was marketed as this. This whole film was marketed as female empowerment. You got one out-of-touch YouTuber, who I'm going to directly make a video about in the next coming days, talking about criticism of this film stems from sexism because Phoebe Waller-Bridge wrote part of the film. Well, guess what, Chris? You're full of it, dude. It's nothing to do with sexism. What we watched on screen was pretty fucking stupid. I don't care how much you love the Daniel Craig era. It's an amalgamation of Batman and whatever the producers are trying to copy from other Christopher Nolan films and The Bournes and now John Wick and other things, as well as it's a self-referential piece of shit, much like the Star Wars sequel films. We can't have an original story. We have to have endless nods and homages. They even use the same music in the same fucking car and flip it. Oh, we're going to have James Bond. Back in the day, well, Bond's wife got shot and he's sad and on the side of the road. In this movie, James Bond blows up and dies. And then guess what? His daughter and his girlfriend drive off in his other Aston Martin to the song We Have All the Time in the World from On Her Majesty's Secret Service. That's what this film fucking was, a cheap ripoff of that, but I digress. I'm sorry, I'm showing my James Bond fandom. Why I really firmly believe that this movie is underperforming, look at the market research, look at the data, look at how the film is talked about. Over on CNBC, they talk about the film bringing in an estimated $56 million, but this is the interesting part that no one else is covering. We want to talk about pandemics and wokeness and all this other shit. The marketing is what is hurting this film. Because in the article, nearly 60% of moviegoers who turned up to see the film this weekend were over 35 years old and 36% of the ticket buyers were aged over 45. So if we look at this new entertainment, this brave new era, this woke era, it's for the youngins. It's for the people younger than me. I'm still younger than the 35-year-old demographic that bought the ticket, but I'm also in a special category, a longtime James Bond fan. I don't go see these movies because they're the newest trend. Most genre pictures, most franchises, I tend to have a long history with. So like going to see Ghostbusters in a couple weeks is not about seeing the new trendy movie. I'm a lifelong Ghostbusters fan. I got a comic book parody, Wokebusters, coming out in a few weeks about it. I love that shit. Same with James Bond. But trying to bring in that new audience, which is never a bad idea in theory, actually failed here. Because if 60% of your audience is over 35 and 36% is over 45, a lot of older people. Older people don't buy into the political correctness. They don't buy into the woke game. A good chunk of our audience is over 35, and I'm very proud of that because we welcome everyone here. We don't push people out because they're too old or too archaic. Look, you might like stuff I don't like, and if you shit on the Power Rangers, you're going to lose some points, but other than that, we're going to be cool. But what's not cool is how No Time to Die was just thrown at us. We can go back to Harper's Bazaar. We can go back to all of these news sources and see that the film was painting a very ugly picture. And then you put Poob, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, involved, and it makes me really not want to go see Indiana Jones 5. Why? Because this chick is the death knell for classic franchises. She fucked up Star Wars. Can you name a shittier character than... What was her name? L337. It took me a second. I almost said K2SO, but he kicked ass. L337, I will say, is the worst Star Wars character ever. Over Holdo, over Rey, over Ethan Van Sciver's little cupcake in a potato sack, Rose Tico. She was the fucking worst. I just saw the new James Bond movie. Her name was on it. Pretty low on my list. Am I supposed to be excited for Indiana Jones? Well, I'm supposed to go in with an open mind so I can pay my $22 for a movie ticket. Then I'm allowed to have an opinion. But you know what? To Chris and all the people out into the world, your bullshit doesn't work on me, it doesn't work on the masses, and it's not working on the James Bond box office. Folks, I'm the first person to come here and tell you that movie wasn't really woke, it wasn't good, but it doesn't fall into the woke category of politics over story. It was a bad story. It was a romance story. It was a story about James Bond in love, trying to be a father, all this terrible shit. If anything, it was off-brand, it was off-theme, it didn't fit James Bond. That's where all the criticisms come from. That, on top of bad marketing, you're going to see the 25th James Bond film in a really interesting position. Now, there's the future. It could always make more, but according to Scott Mendelson, this is a post-pandemic era. And look at Venom 2. Venom 2 broke all these great records, right? Venom Let There Be Carnage brought in over $90 million over the weekend. Well, its opening weekend. First off, the film was budgeted at $110 million, so it was a really big win. They made a lot back really quick. James Bond, on the other hand, is way more expensive. We've talked about this film needing $900 million, and by this film I mean No Time to Die. It needs $900 million to break even. We've heard that. Now we're seeing this. It's at a third of it already, and it's very early, but again, let's talk about Venom. So according to the numbers, Venom opened at over $90 million. The following weekend, it dropped 64% to $32 million. I understand James Bond came out. It was the biggest event of the week, but It never performed as high as Venom, and Venom had a massive drop. One could argue what's more popular, Bond or Marvel, and I'm going to go Marvel. I grew up as a kid who loved James Bond, but let's be honest, James Bond isn't the big franchise it used to be. Box office is great, but when we had other James Bonds, Pierce Brosnan, James Bond was more than a film character, he was a multimedia icon. Books, movies, video games, role-playing games, Pierce Brosnan's James Bond had it all. Daniel Craig, and really the Eon producers, in an attempt to bring a level of class to James Bond, really, themselves, aged themselves out of a bigger box office by making James Bond less accessible to younger people. Instead of marketing your film full of political correctness and how it's going to change men and how you really changed course when you stopped talking about how James Bond can be other things. Before that, folks, it was always James Bond can be black, he can be a woman, it can be all this shit. That has been killing the James Bond interest. You have killed the Q score of James Bond over the last, decade by humoring idiots. The producers of Bond stopped humoring idiots in 2012 Skyfall. Why? They killed the James Bond codename theory by showing James Bond's parents' name. And it worked. And now the marketing of No Time to Die has killed the stupid, and I'm going to keep harping on the stupid part, the stupid notion that anybody can be James Bond. Look, I could be the world's most famous actor. I don't look like James Bond. I shouldn't play the motherfucker. Neither should you. Unless you're Henry Cavill or somebody that acts and looks just like Bond should, then yeah, maybe you could play James Bond. Tell me down in the comments if you could play James Bond. But the Bond producers, in this attempt to make Bond classy, highbrow entertainment, which appeals to an older audience, you really cut out James Bond being everywhere. Back in the day, you could go into a store, find a James Bond videotape, video game, a magazine, something. James Bond was all over. And that was on an off year when there were no movies. James Bond stuck around. He comes out, goes back, and people don't really think about him while he's gone because a big box office is awesome. But James Bond is suffering the same fate as Avatar. Avatar is the highest grossing film of all time, but it has a cultural footprint smaller than Kenny Baker, i.e. a little person. Nobody talks about Avatar. There's the impending sequel, there's the new theme park at Walt Disney fuck, but guess what? That's it. The biggest thing ever, nobody plays with the toys, nobody dresses up on holidays, it's not a cool quip to talk about unobtainium. Most people don't remember Avatar. Avatar was the thing to do. It was an event. It was a movie to go see because everybody else was doing it. James Bond is the opposite of that. It's not the event. Everyone's not going to see it, but it has the same small cultural footprint. And anyone that's getting upset in the comments needs to understand something. That cultural footprint of James Bond had some very big shoes filled by Sean Connery. The character is what it is today because of that guy. I find it very disingenuous that as he's passing, James Bond is being marketed as women, this and that. I don't really care his opinions on new stuff, but I wonder if he was aware of how they marketed James Bond, and if he ever thought to himself, well, shit, they fucked up my character. I wonder what Pierce Brosnan thinks too. Those are the two actors that have had the biggest impact on James Bond. Connery changed the world, and Brosnan picked up the baton and ran with it. He's the only James Bond to be fired by the producers because they want to go in a different direction, but publicly, every one of his James Bond movies were well received, hugely popular, and guess what? We're making bank. Die Another Day is a failure? No, Die Another Day wasn't a failure. Die Another Day was a shitty movie, but guess what? It was the highest grossing James Bond of all time at the time. Does it make it the best? No. Does it make Skyfall the best? Does it make Daniel Craig the best? No. Daniel Craig's era is over. James Bond is middling, and I don't know why I'm happy, but this is one of those situations where I'm channeling my inner Arthur Fleck, aka Joker. What happens to a franchise when you spend years shitting on it, being embarrassed of what it is, and then trying to change it to appeal to a new, younger demographic?
Get what you fucking deserve!